When you start playing Pokemon Pocket, it can be unbelievably overwhelming. There are so many systems wrapped up into this game that it gives you access to all at once. And while the game does have strong guides, they don't teach you how to start using these systems to deck build. And so that's what I hope to do in this little mini series. In this video, we're going to focus on the trainer and item cards, which are the core of almost all Pokemon Pocket decks. In the next video, we're going to be looking at the packs and card acquisition for the other cards to give you the core that you need to start building your own decks. So how do we acquire these trainer cards? Well, as a new player, what you're first going to want to do is follow the tutorials until you unlock this tab, the Battle tab. It'll then prompt you to do these beginner missions for new players, and you'll be forced to do 1 through 6. After you complete those, the game will allow you to move on and do like the next tutorial segments and start doing other stuff. But before you do that, you really are going to want to do the missions 7 through 13. Each of these will grant you 1 item card and a professor's research. This will give you 1 copy of each, but after you have 1 copy, you're still going to need a second. So how do we get these second copies? Well, you're going to need shop tokens. These are super easy to get. In the solo battles tab, you can get them through doing these missions. If you play these, each time you complete one, you'll get 1. And there are like secondary things like play 4 basic Pokemon or knock out an opponent's active Pokemon. It's really simple stuff that'll give you these. You'll get them in no time, and you're only going to need 14. So just use the basic deck the game gives you, slowly go through these. You'll get all you need in no time. And then once you have that, you come over here to the shop where you can see your number of tickets. You'll see right now I have 24, but you'll have whatever number, and you can purchase the cards right here. They're super simple to purchase. You'll have 1 copy of each of these. You can check how many copies you have just to make sure here, and then you can just purchase your second copy. But now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this video and go over when to include these cards, what kind of decks you want to put them in, and some basic knowledge so you can start deck building with these. Now that we've gone over how to get these cards, let's go over how to use them. I'm going to start with what I consider the most powerful one, Professor's Research. Professor's Research is a free draw to. There's basically no downside. The only one is you can't play another supporter card during that turn, but it's a free draw to. It is run as a 2 of in every single deck with no exceptions. If you're starting to build a deck, throw 2 of these in. That's the base to every list. The other card that's going to be an auto include in every deck is Pokeball. Pokeball is it's a draw 1, but it draws a basic Pokemon. This is like running 2 extra basic Pokemon. You can also use this to manipulate which Pokemon you get more often. If you're running 2 of a basic and 1 of all the other basics, and you have 2 in deck, and then you have 2 Pokeballs, you're going to be much more likely to get the one that you're favoring. So this is an auto include in every list as well, a 2 of in every single deck along with Professor's Research. So there we have 4 slots of our deck already knocked out. Now we're going to go into the rest of them. They're a little more subjective. They're all very good, but there's not auto-include situations for all of them. Next, let's talk about Potion. I almost include this in all of my lists. It's amazing in such a fast-paced game like this where you don't want to be taking too much energy to retreat. Being able to stay in an extra turn and like get past a break point to heal is really strong. If you're at 80 and they're hitting with a Ninetales for 90, you can heal up above and get 1 more attack in before you need to retreat or sack your Pokemon. So potions are a very good include in the list, especially when you're putting in your Pokemon and you have a few slots open. I like to throw in 2 potions because they're really good in so many situations. You almost never have this in hand where you're not happy to have it. Next, let's talk about X-Speed. X-Speed is an amazing card because of how fast-paced this game is. You often don't want to be spending energy to retreat because then you're behind energy of your opponent. And energy is really important when we only get 1 per turn, and it's a very fast-paced game. So if you fall behind in energy, you're often going to be playing on the back foot for the rest of the game. So using a card like this, especially in decks where your Pokemon have low retreat costs, for example, Pikachu EX decks, all of the Pokemon in that deck have a 1 energy retreat cost, meaning playing this would just make your Pokemon retreat for free. That's the kind of list where this really, really gets a lot of work done in, and I often find myself running it as a 2 of in those kind of lists. But when your Pokemon have higher retreat costs, it can be good to reduce it, but it's often less strong in those kind of lists because you're still spending energy to retreat, and you could often just spend the full energy as it's going back to the bench anyways. Next, let's talk about Red Card. Okay, so we're going to talk about Red Card and Hand Scope together as they're kind of They're supposed to go together, but you often don't want to play hand scope with red card. First, let's talk about red card. Red card shuffles your opponent's hand into their deck, and then they draw 3. Really good. It's being underrun. I almost never run it as more than a 1-of. But in situations where your opponent is like professors researching, they have a huge hand, and you play this to knock them back down to 3, really good. It gets the card advantage back on your side, and that is, card advantage is so strong. So this is very good. I think they want you to run this with hand scope, where you can take a peek at your opponent's hand and decide if you want a red card or not. I don't think you should be running this card almost ever. It has use case scenarios like scouting for certain trainer cards like Sabrina or Giovanni that you can know to play around, but you're not going to really need to look at your opponent's hand that much. It's nice, but there's not too many cards that play around it other than red card. So I think hand scope is kind of useless. That's not to say that it's not okay in some lists. It's just not good as all the other options you have. A pet card of mine that I don't see many people running, Pokédex. I love this card. In a vacuum, it's not that strong, right? Just looking at the top 3 is not good. But when you pair this with deck manipulation, it becomes a lot stronger. So let's give an example. Almost all decks right now are running Pokeball as a 2-of. If you're running a 1-of Pokédex and you play it, you look at the top 3. Let's say you like those top 3, you don't play your Pokeball, you draw those, and then you Pokeball, right? Or you hate those top 3. They're dead cards. You don't need the second evolution again. You can Pokeball to shuffle your deck, draw a basic, and that gets rid of those top 3. So this allows us to use this as a deck manipulation tool rather than just info gathering. It makes Pokédex a really strong card in your deck, and I like to run it as a 1-of in a lot of my lists. So those are all the basic trainer cards. Now let's move into the advanced trainer cards that you won't have yet, but you should still know about in order to play around. And I'll go over how to get them in the next video. Now let's talk about the non-basic trainer cards. These are available in packs with pack points and through Wonder Picks. I'm going to go over all those systems in the next video. If it's already out, it'll be in the top right up there. You can click over to that after I explain them. But I thought I would give them their time in this video just so you know what they do and which ones you want to target, and then maybe look at the next video on how to obtain these. I'm going to go over these in order of flexibility. So let's start with the very versatile ones. First being Sabrina. This can be auto-included in almost all lists. This just lets you switch out your opponent's active for one of their backlines that they get to pick. This is really good for sniping a weaker backline Pokemon when they have a big frontliner out, or even in stuff like Mewtwo, you can force them to switch their Mewtwo into Gardevoir and take their Gardevoir out. Stuff like that, this card really gets a lot of mileage and is almost never a dead card. So, very good. Next is Giovanni. He's also a very good include, works with a lot of lists, but he specifically works better in decks with Pokemon whose damage is just under a breakpoint. What do I mean by that? So if we look at stuff like Pikachu EX or Ninetales that do 90 damage at max, a lot of Pokemon have 100 health or 150 health. So anything that lets you get from 90 to 100 or 140 to 150, this card is much better in. You don't really need to get from 150 to 160. That's not a breakpoint for very many Pokemon, so those decks wouldn't like this card. But if you are running a list that is doing just under a breakpoint and you want to get above that, this card is a very good include, as it just makes your Pokemon's attack deal 10 more damage. Now we're getting into first we'll talk about Misty, which is pretty versatile. She only works on water Pokemon, but she is a very strong card, very polarizing. A lot of people have talked about how this card is not healthy for the game. I really enjoy playing it because I like the coin flips, but I get why people find it frustrating. What it does is it lets you flip a coin. If it's heads, the Pokemon you selected, that has to be a water type, gets 1 energy, and then it repeats for every heads you get. You keep flipping until you get tails, in which it stops. This does mean that on the first flip you could get tails, get no energy, or you could get 15 heads in a row and then get tails, right? Which makes this card very polarizing. Either you high roll on this and you'll often just win, or you'll low roll on this and it won't be a factor at all. I really like it because I like to play water lists. A lot of the water Pokemon really synergize with this, letting you get like a 4 energy attack on turn 2 is crazy, or on turn 1 is crazy. This card is so strong. But it's very situational, and some people don't like playing decks that revolve all around coin flips. So if you don't, I would stay away from this card. Okay, now we're getting into the more situational trainers that only synergize with specific Pokemon and, aren't amazing unless you feel like playing those Pokemon. So we'll start with Blaine. He works with Ninetales, Rapidash, and Magmar. He gives them plus 30 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, like a buffed up Giovanni, but only for these 3 fire Pokemon. If you're playing an aggro list like this, I'm actually making a video with it. It's very fun getting that like plus 30 damage and kind of killing Pokemon out of nowhere. He's a good card, just only works with those specific Pokemon. Next is Koga. He only works with Muck and Weezing. He'll take them out of the active spot and put them back in your hand, effectively healing them. Very good in poison lists where you poison and you want to just keep your Pokemon alive. It lets you get him out of there for free, get him back, keep applying poison. He's a very good card. Probably one of the best out of these situational trainers. Next, we're going to look at Brock. Brock is kind of one of the worst. He just takes an energy from your energy zone and puts it on Golem or Onix. That's pretty weak. It's a 1 energy acceleration, which is good, don't get me wrong, but those Pokemon specifically have higher energy costs for their attacks, making this kind of so-so as a include in your deck. But if you want to play those Pokemon, of course, try it out. While I was editing, I realized I forgot to talk about Erica. She's a grass trainer, heals 50 damage from one of your grass type Pokemon. Another good trainer card, pretty flexible since she hits all grass type, but still on the more situational side. And last, we're going to talk about Lieutenant Surge. This is one of my personal faves. He's not amazing, but he's strong in certain decks and allows for a combo. So he moves all your energy from your bench Pokemon to either Raichu, Electrode, or Electabuzz in the active spot. You're almost always going to be using this with Raichu, as he has a 3 energy attack that gets rid of all energy on him. But what it lets you do is stack up energy on other Pokemon, switch into a Raichu, and Raichu does 140. Another example of where Giovanni is really good, because 140, you want to get to 150. But Lieutenant Surge lets you move all the energy onto that one Pokemon, allowing you to kind of sneakily put a ton of energy and get an attack off. So he's very good, but only with those specific Pokemon and Raichu, because Electabuzz and Electrode are not quite as good. So yeah, I hope this helps. If you're curious on how to get these cards, there is a video. The next video should include that. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.